Well, I know a lot of people have been covering this yet another YouTube hit piece. This time, it attempts to homogenize most of the commentary community. People like Sargon of Akkad, Andy Worski, Chris Reagan, you name them, they're on this list, both of past and present relevance. It tries to homogenize it all into this basically alt-right feeder network. And I'm going to share my thoughts, which are, I think, different than maybe what you've heard other places. And I think the primary reason we're seeing this continued attack on specifically now the YouTube commentator community is they're afraid. They're jealous. They hate us because they ain't us. They work for a huge company. They spent huge sums of money getting a journalism degree, and they languish away on what remains basically clickbait websites that rely on the commentator community for exposure. So it's a symbiotic, parasitic relationship between the commentator and the dying mainstream. In this case, it's The Guardian, which was, of course, picked up by almost everybody else out there. And I think you'll find when we look at just a few phrases in this article, exactly what the motivation for the author really is. So by now, you're familiar with the article. Essentially, it's called YouTube's Alternative Influence Network Breeds Right-Wing Radicalization. Report finds. But of course, they provide no real evidence. It says things like, YouTube provides a breeding ground for far-right radicalization. Make no mistake about it, there are people in the alt-right, but it's a small group. And so this is why the media has to paint everybody else as alt-right. That's why they call me alt-right. Anybody who pushes back against like forced diversity, or maybe some people who believe in strong borders, they call them alt-right because they have built up this boogeyman in the normies' mind. Mainstream media, online outlets have all been using alt-right to smear anybody who's even in the middle, basically. So they continue to have to force more people into that group, because if people really found out how big the alt-right was and how influential they are, then it would destroy their entire narrative. Although YouTube's recommendation algorithm are partly to blame, so delivering content that people want to watch is a problem. The problem, of course, though, is fundamentally linked to the social network of political influencers. So we have a problem when creators work together, even if we don't have the same opinions. They're saying that creators working together to help each other is a problem. Rather be the monolith staring down at everybody like The Guardian. They invite each other onto their shows. The report describes an alternative influence network, about 65 scholars, blah, 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 discussing images of the alt-right or white supremacism often conjures a sense of the dark corners of the internet, states the report. In fact, much of the extreme content is happening front and center. Yeah, that's right. Andy Worski has a live stream of 7,000 people. The Guardian freaks out. Logan Paul shows a dead body and it gets 30 million views and nobody cares. Although in that case they did. But you get what I'm saying. Jake Paul, Logan Paul, all these cancerous daily vloggers, they forget the millions of views they get. Let's worry about the 30,000 that Andy Worski or Sargon of Akkad got on a live stream, right? It's publicly endorsed, right? It's easily accessible. Platforms like YouTube publicly endorsed and well-resourced individuals interfacing directly with mainstream culture. Yeah, I don't think so. Now there is a growing number of normies. Okay, I'm going to speak about this at MythCon. There's a growing number of normies who are getting their news from commentators, or at least seeking additional opinions. But it would be an extraordinary stretch for you to say that normies are attending internet blood sports live streams. Okay, they're not. And the more mainstream end of the network are people such as Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Dave Rubin. That's right, Dave Rubin, the gay liberal, is alt-right now, right? While the mainstream members of the group typically don't subscribe to alt-right or white nationalist ideas, oh, well, then why does this article exist? They do host who under very friendly terms. So basically, if you have somebody on your show and you're a good host like Dave Rubin, you are complicit. You are the problem, part of the problem, right? They have these conversations where openly racist ideas are getting thrown around as if they are perfectly normal. The thing is, I was a part of that crowd watching Worski Live for a long time, and it was impossible to get anyone to come on and present the other side. Rarely you might get someone like Destiny or something to come and to stand on the other side, but it wasn't like they didn't invite them. Okay, but a topic that this author disingenuously ignores. Examples of Dave Rubin daring to host Stefan Molyneux, who openly promotes scientific racism and advocates for the men's rights movement. Look, I don't know every one of Stefan Molyneux's views, specifically around race realism, but what's wrong with the men's rights movement? Is that a particularly alt-right opinion? And also, what world are you living in where this is such the idiotic point of view where bad ideas should be hidden or censored? You don't hide or censor bad ideas because they just go underground and they grow and they fester. You give them a microphone, a megaphone, and you debunk their ideas in front of everybody. That's what you do with bad ideas. You don't hide them. Although Rubin doesn't always endorse these views, he doesn't challenge them in any substantive way and appears to take words at face value. So she's mad, in this case, that Stefan Molyneux is talking about how race and IQ may be linked, and he asks, well, is there science? And Molyneux says, yes. Okay, and they move on. So what she wants is what? Dave Rubin, a guy who runs a show in his basement like I do, to have 10 scientists on panel ready to go to debunk every guest he has on? Is that the standard you're expecting? Well, how come you aren't asking that of CNN or Fox News? How come you're not asking MSNBC for the same thing? I'll tell you why. It's because you're losing. You're losing badly. You're losing financially, and you're losing in share of voice, which is far more important. Then they put together this chart, which we're going to just laugh at because this is old data. I mean, they put guys like Tim Pool in the alt-right network. There are some people in here who are definitely right-wing, but there's also a lot of people that aren't. I mean, Sargon of Akkad is a liberal. You have Tim Pool, liberal. I don't know a lot of these people. James Damore, they put him out here just because that guy T is a libertarian, if I remember correctly. Tree of Logic, I think she's basically just a traditional Republican. Bunty King, right? They're smearing. This is basically Chris Raygun. This is a hit list. This is what they want. They want these people deplatformed. They want these people demonetized. That's what they want. Why? Because their voice is extraordinarily loud. And we're nimble as commentators in this community. I can come down here, shoot a video, and if it's a good one, reach 100,000 people for relatively low cost, other than just my time investment. The Guardian has this huge behemoth of a company, hundreds or thousands of employees, salaries, advertising contracts to worry about. We don't have to worry about any of that. And they're super jealous. They see the money. Let's talk about YouTube. So now they try to smear YouTube and say, well, YouTube profits from these live debates through the super chat feature, which allows users to have their comments highlighted, even if the channel fails to meet YouTube's advertiser-friendly content. So what they're pointing out is, look, if you're making the type of content that doesn't get normally monetized, how dare you have this other way to make money? I'm sure The Guardian doesn't have any interstitial ads or product placement or anything like that. I'm sure they just run the standard ads because anything they run now is now complicit, right? So if I see an ad on this website, oh, yep, there we go. The Americans for Prosperity is now complicit. Uh-oh, Bing advertising now is complicit. You know, it's Tableau, the spreadsheet data analysis software, now complicit and profiting from this slanderous article. And they go on to say, well, because YouTube takes a chunk of Super Chat, it's like they're letting them through this mystery loophole. And they say things like, these paid for comments are frequently used to spread hate speech. Provides no examples. But you just must take their word. Now, didn't you just complain that Dave Rubin didn't challenge that point of view? And here you have an article where you provide no proof. One of the challenges for YouTube is how careful the more extreme members of the network are to avoid breaking the platform's community guidelines. Even the most open white nationalists know how to just stay within the terms of service. So the problem is, here's where the article really gets absurd. The problem is that you can't ban people simply because you want to. And you can't take their livelihood simply because you want to, because you openly admit that they are adhering to the terms and services of YouTube. And that pisses you off, doesn't it? You almost never hear them using racial slurs. They couch the language in a way that obfuscates its violent overtones. So what's the problem? If they're not saying what you're worried about, why aren't you happy? They also employ pervasive influencer marketing techniques to increase their audience. Ooh, stop marketing your videos. Hey, if you're right here in this video, please, whatever you do, don't like the video. Because if you do, you're then taking part in this radicalization of people on YouTube. Definitely don't like it. Don't. And definitely don't share it on Twitter. Okay, I don't want to be a part of this. Search queries like social justice, liberal, and intersectionality will yield results from members of the network because they frequently use these terms in the titles of their videos. So people that accurately name their videos are now an issue. It's not that the video isn't about social justice and you just put it in the title. No, it's a video about social justice. So your side left. The Francesca Ramseys and all these feminists left. They gave up because they weren't making what? Enough money on YouTube. That's why they left. And they were getting blown out of every debate. Your problem is not with commentators, the conservative commentators, or even people in the alt-right. Your problem should be with your comrades who abandoned YouTube because they couldn't stand by their own ideas. YouTube is an open platform where anyone can post a video to a global audience. No shit. Subject to our community guidelines we enforce rigorously. The company has tightened the rules for which channels have access to monetization features and deployed machine learning technology to identify hate speech in comment sections. If a user is caught sending abusive super chats, the revenue received will be donated to charity instead of being split between YouTube and the channel's creator. That's insane. I'm sure it's buried in the terms of service, but I have a lot of questions. What charity? And don't you think you should refund their money rather than still profiting from it? When an anonymous account with 4 followers tweets a conspiracy, it's very different than when Alex Jones posts the exact same conspiracy theory. Yeah, no shit. But that's how they grow. If you seek to silence even the most absurd, then their ideas grow out of the daylight. Lewis proposes that YouTube should consider not only reviewing the content of the channel, here we go, identified in this report, so it is absolutely a hit list, but the people they host and what their guests say. YouTube is choosing to continue to endorse the content of these people who are delivering really harmful messages. Citation needed. This is not about this author's actual genuine concern. It isn't. If it really was, she would have provided literally any examples. She did not do so. This is about jealousy, a lust for an audience that they have lost by being disingenuous liars for the past 20 years. Enjoy spurging out at the very end here, Guardian and the rest of the mainstream media. Your days are over. Your influence is gone. Your credibility, gone. These hit pieces are the last death throes of a dying monolith.